Alright, there is this anarcho-capitalist woman that, or I should say Uncle Tom, that a couple of my feminist friends wanted me to do a video about and slam into the ground. Now, I didn't know whether to start with the whole anarcho-capitalism thing, or the fact that she is anti-feminism, even though feminism is the reason she has at least some of the rights she does today. This is not to say that, we would be under the same oppression as we were in, 1950, 1960, were it not for the socialist movements, but we would still be under much more oppression, especially women. And most especially, I just find it revolting and insulting that she would degrade that movement, and she would degrade the fact of what leftists have historically done for the rights of minorities, and for the rights of pretty much anybody that isn't of white privileged class. So, reflecting upon all of that, I'm just going to try to do the best I can to cover all planks at the same time. And the best way I can do that is by pointing out how, a common argument amongst both women and leftists is that they argue purely from emotional standpoints. Let me tell you something about emotions. Emotions are your primal instincts. There's a reason why half of the time you go thinking, I should have listened to that gut feeling. Emotions come down to that instinctive fight or flight mechanism. There's a reason why you have it. It's there for your own survival. If you feel emotional about something, most likely it's going to affect you. This does not mean that emotions are always correct or that they're always accurate, but they are there for a reason, and they are very practical at it. So, even to just say arguing from an emotional standpoint is under the pretense that yes, we're more in tune with our survival mechanisms. We are more in tune with what keeps us alive. That is not a bad thing in and of itself. But even so, that's not really what leftists and women typically do. The whole leftist demographic uses this thing called the dialectics of Marxism. Not dialects, exterminate, the dialectics. Dialectics is the short way of saying that we try to rationalize the best course of action to move away from capitalism and more toward a communist collective. And some people get turned off just by those words alone, communist and collective. I got news for you. You're busting your ass anyway, working for minimum wage. Your boss does not appreciate you. He could eject you at a moment's notice, and then you're out on the street. You already live in a collective, but does that collective work for you? Does that collective care about your rights and your sovereignty and your life? No, it does not. So, the point is, we are, as a species, a collective entity, and we should work toward that collective entity benefiting everybody within the fold. We work hard, we should be protected, but we're not protected, so clearly something is wrong. Why is it such a bad thing to think that the collective has some responsibility to its participants that keep it substantial? So, now understanding all of that, I want to talk more about economics, because anarcho-capitalists don't seem to understand economics. Apparently they didn't pass grade school math, but they want to tell other people what's up. The whole idea of anarcho-capitalism is that if government wasn't around, people would just trade and participate with one another, free of confusion and coercion and all those other bad words. But let's look at the reality. The reality of the matter is that people that don't have money don't have purchasing power. Only an elite few people have purchasing power, which means there's only a few people in the world who can rely on their emotions to dictate the course of the economy. That's what the economy comes down to. You want to talk about feelings? Nothing considers feelings more than the economy. If investors do not feel like something is going to profit them, if investors think something is a bad idea, they're not going to put money into it, which means it's not going to happen to begin with. And if the consumer does not feel like he has the money to consume, money is not going to go into what was produced, and then they're going to stop producing it. Therefore, the only way to keep the economy stable is to keep everybody happy and make them think that they have more money and more security than what they really do. So, understanding that, how can we give people the confidence to go out there and buy shit and invest in shit? Maybe we should tax the fuck out of the rich who already know what that feels like. They already know what it feels like not having to worry about if they're going to lose their house tomorrow, not having to worry about if they get an injury, if they can afford it medically. They already accomplished what they want out of life for the most part. So why aren't we taxing them? They aren't going to care. A multi-billionaire is not really going to be hurt if he gets taxed even so much as to become a multi-millionaire. He's still going to have enough money to invest. He's still going to have enough money to buy shit. He's still going to have enough money to provide for him and his family. Why then are we not taxing them in order to give to people that have not? That way they too can experience the feeling of being able to actually participate in the economy and not just scrounge at the very bottom. If poor people had more money, they'd probably go out and buy shit or invest, and therefore would be contributing more so than the rich who just want to keep the grotesque amount that they already possess. And this isn't even communism. This is just Keynesian on a level that far exceeds anything America has ever done. It's just practical socialism. That's really all it is. And that's another thing. People always confuse socialism for communism. It isn't. If there is private property involved, it's not communism. Socialism indeed gives people the training wheels to deal with communism on a psychological and spiritual level. Once you see that it's not about who has the authority and who has the power, it's about us, it's about our participation, our cooperation that produces all the nice things, then yes, you're more morally prepared for communism, but it is not communism in and of itself. It cannot be. And so, it's the job of every Marxist to try and go about communism in his own way. Whether they believe in revolution, reform, some kind of easing in through socialism, or direct confrontation. Whatever their beliefs are, the point is we want to get away from our class enslavement. Why are we in this class enslavement? Let me put it to you this way. Who do you trust more with $1 million? A person that already has $1 billion, or a crackhead? I trust the crackhead with it. Yes, the crackhead will most likely spend that $1 million primarily on crack. But at least he will be buying something. At least the wheels of the economy are turning, and he's actually putting that money into production, which is going to return back to him and to his society with some kind of tangible gain. What is the billionaire going to do with another $1 million? Absolutely nothing. He might invest a little bit in some kind of invention or some kind of new gadget, but in reality he's not even really going to invest in the production of it. He's going to invest in the security of his already billions of dollars. He's going to invest in making sure that he can take over a company that can ensure that he continues to have billions of dollars until the end of time. So the standards are different. The end goals are different once you have more money. So the point is to keep everyone at a level field. That way the issue is about production and not about money, and not about gains, and not about profits and power. But that eludes the entirety of the right wing, especially this new right wing that is nothing more than a repackaged, social right authoritarian neo-fascist. Because haven't you ever noticed how anarcho-capitalists and neo-Nazis and the fascists and monarchists and everything all seem to get along pretty well? This was already talked about in the Communist Manifesto. The czars, the popes, the French liberal revolutionaries, they all made excuses for each other because they wanted to smash any kind of real class consciousness. It wasn't about their ideology. It was about making sure that the workers never rose up and got what they deserved. It was about making sure that they produced for their sake and not for the sake of the economy and the betterment of humanity in and of itself. You're going to tell me that poor people would not use their money at least somewhat intelligently. You're going to tell me that poor people would not go out and invest that money so that people could build a new gizmo, so that, people could produce art and cinema and all kinds of other fantastic things. You're going to tell me that there's nobody out there that if they had the opportunity, they would use that money to, for scientific studies, to try to cure cancer, or HIV, or whatever the fuck, it doesn't matter. The point is, there's no difference mentally between people, but your standards become completely different once you're already at that level, and then you have no incentive to do otherwise. The fact is, these rich guys already know what they should and should not invest in on a moral level, but they're not doing it. Why? Because they don't fucking care. Why should they care? They have all the money in the world, they have all the power in the world, they're caring about themselves. And we live in a society that rewards that mentality of sociopaths. So until we reach a point where the economy rewards honest, hardworking, sensible people, you're never going to have any good in the world. So there's no point to being an anarcho-capitalist. And I have news for you, capitalism is never going to work like that. The only way for capitalism to magically work is if everyone on the face of the earth suddenly has a 180 degree on their entire psyche. That's not going to happen. And that's not how communism works. Everyone says, oh, communism can't work. It has worked. It has not worked forever, but that is because we live on a capitalist planet. Capitalist planet full of exploiters, full of revisionists, full of people that conspire against those communist revolutions. And this is not to say we should just give up. Oh, because, there are bad people in the world that stab us, that enslave us, that torment us, that abuse us, moderators. We're suddenly supposed to, not believe in anything? No. You fight that, and you go through the dialectics involved to try and fight that. But communism does work, and it does reflect upon the real world. And it says that, yes, not everyone in the world is a communist. Let's work toward bringing communism into the world based on what we know and based on what we can do, as opposed to all these newfangled capitalist ideologies that say, yes, all evidence shows it does not work, all evidence shows it's never going to work for me, but let's support it anyway, just out of the sheer principle. That is not dialectics. That is a religion. What anarcho-capitalists and neo-fascists and neo-Nazis and monarchists and all whatever the fuck they want to call themselves are, is a religion, a cult. And I am not going to follow a cult. And I'm not going to sit here and watch other people be converted to a cult. And unfortunately for this poor woman, she has been converted into a cult to such a degree that she loathes herself and her own body. She hates the fact that she's a woman. She thinks that all women are just, flighty, psychopathic animals that only think with their bloody vaginas. And I feel very sorry for her. But it is up to me as the rational human being to try and snap some sense back into her and into the rest of you, to show you the plight that we are really under, and we don't have to be. We have a choice. It's not an easy choice to make, but it is a choice, and it's really the only choice we have, because what's the alternative? This bullshit? I don't think so. That's it.